Clara stared at the dim light of her phone screen, the hum of her small apartment settling like a weight on her chest. Every day felt the same: shifts at the bakery, the clatter of coins exchanged for bread, the empty evenings spent scrolling through a world that seemed just out of reach. The silence pressed harder since her father's death, her mother's voice filling the house with worry, asking when Clara would find something real. One evening, as snow drifted past her window, a message appeared on her screen. "Hello, Clara. I don't know why, but your smile feels familiar. My name is Aarav." The name lingered. His profile picture showed a man with dark eyes and a quiet confidence, leaning against a sunlit balcony. Clara hesitated, thumb hovering, then replied with a cautious. Conversations flowed like water. Aarav spoke of fate, of how some souls were meant to find each other no matter the distance. He described Delhi's chaos, its colors and heat, and how he longed to share it with someone who understood him. Clara felt a spark she hadn't known in years. At night, lying in bed, she read his words until her eyes blurred. "You are different, Clara. Pure, real. Do you believe love can cross oceans?" She typed back slowly. "Maybe that's the only kind of love worth chasing." Her mother noticed the shift, the secretive smiles, the late-night whispers. "Who are you talking to?" she asked one morning, her voice sharp with suspicion. "Just a friend," Clara answered too quickly. Her mother pressed, warning her about men who promised too much. "You don't know him, Clara. Don't be foolish." But Aarav's messages filled the cracks in her life with warmth. When he called her his destiny, her chest ached with longing. He sent pictures of sunsets over the Yamuna River, stories of his family estate where he said she would be treated like a queen. "You deserve more than that cold little town," Aarav said over a late-night call, his voice steady and deep. "Come here, let me show you what love is meant to be." Clara's breath caught. "India? It's far. Far is nothing when hearts are close," he replied. "I'll be waiting at the airport with roses in my hand." She lay awake, torn between fear and desire. The bakery, the grey streets, the loneliness, it all felt unbearable against the vivid promise he painted. She imagined herself stepping into a life alive with colour, with someone who saw her not as a burden but as a dream. The next day, while her mother dozed in the living room, Clara opened her laptop. Her hands trembled as she typed in her credit card number. The confirmation email blinked across her screen. A flight to Delhi, departure, in 3 weeks. Clara closed the laptop, her heart racing. She whispered to herself, "This is it, my chance." Outside, snow fell heavier, burying the streets in silence. Inside, Clara held her secret close, convinced that, on the other side of the world, love was waiting. The heat wrapped around Clara like a heavy cloak. The moment she stepped out of the airport, horns blared in every direction, the air thick with dust, exhaust, and spices she couldn't name. Her suitcase wheels rattled against the cracked pavement as she scanned the crowd, heart thudding so fast she could hear it in her ears. Then she saw him, Aarav, tall, dark-eyed, dressed in a crisp white shirt that glowed under the harsh sun, in his hand a small bouquet of roses. He smiled as if she were the only person in the chaos. "Clara," he said, voice warm, steady. He held out the flowers. "You came." Her chest tightened. She took the roses, the thorns pricking her fingers lightly, grounding her in this surreal moment. "Of course I came." He leaned close, brushing a kiss against her cheek. "You're safe now, with me." They slid into a waiting car. The driver maneuvered through swarming scooters and honking buses, while Clara pressed her forehead against the glass, drinking in the whirl of colors. Women in bright saris, fruit carts piled high, stray dogs darting between wheels. It was overwhelming, alive, nothing like her quiet town. Aarav reached for her hand. "This is only the beginning. I'll show you a world where you belong." At the hotel, a grand lobby opened before her, chandeliers gleaming above polished marble floors. She felt underdressed in her simple dress, but Aarav's arm around her shoulder shielded her insecurity. In the room, he set down her bags, poured water into glasses, and studied her face with intensity. You're even more beautiful than in the pictures, he said softly. Clara flushed, looking away. I don't know what to say. Say you trust me, Aarav murmured. She hesitated, then whispered, I trust you. The next days blurred into a kaleidoscope. He took her to markets heavy with the scent of jasmine and fried food, to temples glowing with candles, to rooftop cafes where the city stretched endlessly below. His hand never left hers, his voice filling the gaps with stories of his childhood, his dreams, but small cracks showed. When Clara paused to take pictures of a beggar child, Aarav's jaw tightened. Don't, he said sharply. This isn't for you to capture. Later, when she mentioned wanting to call her mother, his eyes flickered. You'll have time. Right now, be here, with me. She told herself it was cultural difference, a different way of protecting what was his. The warmth of his touch drowned out the unease. On their fourth evening, Aarav led her away from the crowded center. The city thinned, the streets quieter, the glow of shops fading into darkness. Clara frowned. Where are we going? My family's home, he said, smiling as if it were the most natural thing in the world. They've been waiting to meet you. The car bumped along uneven roads, passing shuttered buildings and stretches of emptiness. Clara's stomach tightened, but Aarav's fingers laced through hers firmly. You'll love it there, he whispered. It's where you'll finally see what forever looks like. The headlights cut into the night as the car veered off the main road. A large gate loomed ahead, iron bars silhouetted against the dark. Clara held her breath, clutching the roses he had given her days earlier, now dried and fragile in her bag. The gate creaked open. The car rolled through the iron gate, crunching gravel beneath its tires. A tall house loomed ahead, its facade grand yet strangely unlit. Shadows clung to its walls, the windows dark, the air unnervingly still. Clara pressed her palms against her knees, trying to ignore the knot tightening in her stomach. Aarav leaned close. Don't be nervous. My family is private. They don't like noise. The driver parked, and Aarav guided her out. The roses in her bag rustled as she stepped onto the stone path. The front door opened before they reached it, revealing an older woman in a sari. Her face was kind, but her eyes downcast, hollow, never met Clara's. This is my aunt, Aarav said. His hand rested lightly, almost possessively, on Clara's back. She runs the house. The woman nodded silently and stepped aside. The air inside smelled of incense mixed with something faintly metallic. Clara's shoes clicked against marble floors as she followed Aarav down a long corridor. The silence pressed against her ears. No laughter, no voices, only the echo of their footsteps. He showed her to a room with high ceilings and a single barred window. A carved wooden bed stood in the center, white sheets too perfectly laid out. You'll rest here, he said. Tomorrow you'll meet everyone. Clara set down her bag, uneasy. It's beautiful, she whispered, though the walls felt like they were closing in. Aarav smiled thinly. You'll be happy here. Trust me. That night, Clara tossed beneath the sheets. The house creaked with unfamiliar sounds. Somewhere in the distance, a door slammed. She sat up, listening. Soft footsteps moved past her door, then silence again. In the morning, she wandered into the hallway. A heavy padlock hung on a door across from hers. Another door farther down was bolted shut. She turned, startled, when a young woman appeared at the far end. Her hair was tangled, her sari faded. Their eyes met for only a second before the woman lowered her gaze and hurried away. Clara's voice caught, "Wait," but the woman disappeared into another room, the door clicking shut. Aarav emerged behind her. You shouldn't roam alone, he said sharply. His fingers wrapped around her arm, not hard enough to bruise but firm, unyielding. This house has rules. Clara forced a smile, her throat dry. I was just curious. He studied her, then softened his tone. Curiosity can be dangerous, my love. Remember, everything I do is for you. That evening, Clara asked if they could go into the city again. Aarav's jaw tightened. Why? What's there that you need? You have everything here. Her heart fluttered uneasily. I just wanted to see more. He cupped her face gently, though his eyes were cold. In time, For now, stay close. This is your home. Later, when she tried to open the front door, she found it bolted from the outside. Panic prickled across her skin. She tugged harder, but the lock didn't budge. Her breath came shallow as realization sank in. She couldn't leave. The sound of footsteps made her jump. She turned to see the older woman from before, carrying a tray of food. Their eyes met briefly. The woman's lips parted, as if to speak, but no words came. She set the tray down silently and slipped away, the door clicking behind her. Clara stood alone, the untouched meal before her, her chest tightening with dread. The house was no longer a home, but a cage dressed in marble and shadows. Outside, the iron gate clanged shut with a finality that echoed through the walls. Clara woke to faint murmurs drifting through the wall. She pressed her ear against the cool plaster, straining to catch the words. They were hushed, hurried, but distinctly female. She slipped from bed, her bare feet cold on the marble floor, and edged closer to the door. When she opened it, the hallway was dim, the only light spilling from a single bulb overhead. At the far end, two women stood close, their heads bent together. One looked no older than Clara, her hair cropped short, her frame gaunt. The other had streaks of grey at her temples, her sari frayed. The younger woman saw Clara first. Her eyes widened, and she shook her head sharply, warning. The older one turned, lips pressing into a thin line. They slipped into a side room, and the door clicked shut. Clara's pulse raced. She wanted to run after them, demand answers, but fear rooted her. She backed into her room, shut the door, and leaned against it, trembling. Later that day, Aarav entered, his smile too bright, his words too smooth. "You're settling in?" "Yes," Clara lied, her voice barely steady. He touched her cheek with a gentleness that felt rehearsed. "Good. You must remember you are mine now. This house, these walls, they're your world. I protect what's mine." When he left, locking the door behind him, Clara sagged against the bed, tears stinging her eyes. That night, she heard soft tapping. 3 knocks, a pause, then 2 more. She crept to the door and cracked it open. A face peeked back, the younger woman from the hall. "Quick," the girl whispered. "Before he returns." Clara followed her into a narrow passage that smelled of dust and damp stone. The girl introduced herself in hurried breaths. "My name is Lena. I came here 2 years ago, thought he loved me, like you." Clara's throat tightened. "You mean Aarav?" Lena nodded. "Him. And others. They say words we want to hear. Then they bring us here." The passage led into a small, hidden room. 3 other women sat on thin mats, their faces pale, their eyes hollow. They looked up as Clara entered, their gazes heavy with stories unspoken. One woman, older, spoke in accented English. "I am Sophia, from Spain. I was promised marriage, papers, a life, but I have been here 6 years." Clara's knees buckled. She sat hard on the floor, clutching her arms. "Why doesn't anyone stop this? Why not call?" "There is no phone," Sophia interrupted, her voice edged with bitterness. "Guards outside, locks everywhere. The neighbors are paid to stay blind. And if we disobey, he punishes us." Lena touched Clara's hand lightly. "He will say you are special, that he protects you. But soon he will ask for things, to sign papers, to make videos. If you refuse..." She trailed off, glancing at Sophia, whose wrist bore a faint scar. Clara swallowed hard. "My mother, she doesn't even know I'm here." The women fell silent, their faces shadows of her own fear. For the first time, Clara felt the weight of her decision crush her chest fully. She wasn't a visitor, not even a guest. She was another prisoner. A door slammed somewhere above. The women froze. Lena pulled Clara back toward the passage. "Go. Pretend you never met us, or he'll know." Clara hurried into her room, heart hammering, ears filled with the echo of whispered warnings. She sat in the dark, clutching the roses she had carried from home, now brittle and crumbling in her hands. Somewhere beyond the barred window, the city roared with life. Inside the house, silence pressed like a suffocating hand. Days blurred together, each one a repetition of the last. Clara ate when food was brought, slept when exhaustion overcame her, and listened for footsteps outside her door. The house no longer felt silent. It breathed. It watched. It listened. One evening Aarav entered without warning. He carried a folder under his arm, his expression carefully calm. Sitting across from her, he slid papers across the table. "Sign these," he said softly. Clara picked them up, scanning the lines. They were written in a language she couldn't understand. "What is this?" "Formalities," he replied, his smile taut. "Declarations that you are my fiancé. It protects you here." Her stomach twisted. Shouldn't I read them properly?" His voice sharpened. "Do you not trust me, Clara?" She forced herself to meet his eyes. "I just want to understand." Aarav leaned forward, his hand brushing her cheek, gentle but chilling. "Sometimes trust means not asking questions. If you love me, you'll sign." She placed the pen down, her fingers trembling. "Not tonight." His smile vanished. For a moment silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then he stood abruptly, gathering the papers. "Very well." His tone was flat, controlled, but his eyes burned with fury. "You'll learn." The next day, no food arrived. Clara knocked on the door until her hands hurt, her throat dry. She shouted, but only her echo answered. Hours dragged, hunger gnawing at her belly, her mouth parched. When finally the door creaked open, it was the older woman, her eyes darting nervously. She set down a tray of stale bread and water, whispering so low, Clara barely caught it. "Obey, or worse will come." That night, Aarav returned. He carried a small camera, setting it on the table with deliberate care. "You'll speak to the lens. Tell the world how much you love me. Tell them you came here willingly." Clara shook her head, voice breaking. "I can't." He cut her off, his palm slamming against the wall beside her head. The sound reverberated through the room. "You will, or you'll starve again, maybe longer this time." Her body trembled, tears slipping down her face. She whispered, "Why are you doing this?" Aarav's expression softened, almost tender. "Because love must be proven. Words alone mean nothing. Show me. Show the world." She swallowed her sobs, nodding weakly. He pressed record. Clara's voice was hollow as she recited the lines he fed her. "I love Aarav. I am happy here. This is my choice." When it was over, he kissed her forehead. "Good girl. See? That wasn't so hard." The door shut behind him, the lock clicking, but the air remained heavy with his presence. Clara collapsed onto the bed, her chest heaving with silent cries. Later, in the darkness, she heard a faint tap at the wall. 3 knocks, then 2. She pressed her ear close. A whisper filtered through. It was Sophia. "You did well to resist at first," Sophia murmured. "But remember, obedience has a price too. None of us stay untouched." Clara pressed her fist to her mouth, stifling a sob. She realized there was no safe choice. Whether she obeyed or defied, the house would take pieces of her until nothing was left. And still, whispers of escape lingered like fragile. The tapping came again in the dead of night. 3 knocks, a pause, then 2. Clara slipped from the bed, heart hammering, and pressed her ear to the wall. "It's time," Sophia whispered, "if you still want to leave." Clara's hands shook as she felt for the hidden seam of the door. When it opened, Sophia stood there, thin but fierce, a scarf wrapped tightly over her hair. In her hand glinted a small iron key. "I stole it from the guard," she breathed. "We won't get another chance." They crept down the hallway, bare feet silent on the cold floor. The house seemed to sleep, its shadows deeper than before. Clara's pulse roared in her ears. In the kitchen, a faint light flickered from under a door. Sophia motioned for her to stay still, then peeked through the crack. "Empty," she mouthed. They slipped inside, the scent of spices and rotting fruit filling their nostrils. Sophia's plan was simple. Through the back door, across the yard, past the guard post. Beyond that, a small road led to the main highway. Freedom lived somewhere beyond the gate. Clara's throat tightened. "What if we're caught?" Sophia's eyes hardened. "Then at least we tried." The back door creaked softly as they opened it. Cool air brushed Clara's face. She tasted freedom and fear all at once. They darted across the courtyard, crouching low behind a line of stone planters. The gate loomed ahead, the lock hanging heavy. Sophia knelt, fumbling with the key. It scraped, refusing to turn. "Hurry," Clara whispered. A shout cut through the night. A guard's silhouette appeared at the far corner, his flashlight slicing across the yard. "Run," Sophia hissed. Clara sprinted, her legs weak but desperate. She reached the edge of the gate just as Sophia wrenched the lock free. Together they shoved the gate open, the hinges screaming. The guard lunged, grabbing Sophia by the arm. She struck out, clawing at his face, her scream sharp and raw. "Go!" Clara froze. "I can't." "Go!" Sophia shouted again, her voice breaking. "Don't let them take you too." Another guard emerged from the darkness. Clara stumbled through the gap, the gravel cutting into her feet. She ran blindly down the narrow road, the shouts behind her fading into a blur of sound. Branches scratched her arms, stones tore at her soles. But she didn't stop. The night opened up around her, wide and black, the smell of dust and diesel thick in the air. Finally she collapsed behind a low wall, gasping, tears streaming down her face. Her hands clutched at the dirt as if it could hold her steady. Somewhere far behind, Sophia's scream echoed once, then vanished into silence. Clara pressed her forehead to her knees, swallowing sobs. She was out, but she wasn't free. Not yet. Ahead lay a road she didn't know, a country vast and foreign, and a man who would be looking for her. She wiped her face with trembling fingers, forcing herself upright. She could see headlights in the distance, a faint hum of traffic. The world was still moving, even as hers had shattered. Clara took a breath, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm not going back." She stepped onto the road, barefoot and bleeding, and began to walk toward the lights. Clara stumbled onto the road, waving until a truck screeched to a stop. The driver, startled by her torn clothes and bloodied feet, helped her climb in. At dawn she reached the embassy, collapsing as words spilled of Aarav, the house, the women still trapped. Officials listened, police alerted. That night, raids stormed the property. Women were freed, guards taken. But Aarav was gone, vanished into the city's shadows. Home again, Clara was hailed as a survivor. Newspapers called it a love scam, but headlines could never capture Sophia's last scream or the hollow eyes of Lena. Nights brought nightmares, footsteps in empty halls, roses crumbling in her hands. Her mother's embrace couldn't erase the truth. Freedom had a price. Clara lived, but pieces of her remained locked in that house, with the women who hadn't escaped. And somewhere, Aarav still breathed.